First, I want to show you the first lesson we did and the first game we did. So first of all, if you haven't used the growing math site before, you can go, any of the lessons here you can use, all right? So let's say I want to do a lesson on ratio and proportion. Or there's a bunch of ways you could look it up, but I'm going to pick that and click submit. And the first thing it's going to come up with here is it's going to say cross-curricular lesson on Native American vets. And anything Don and I were just talking about standards. So Dale, you said you're after school program. I know in California, one of the big things is they want students to be learning like academic content. Do you get required to do that at all, or do they give you a hard time about it, or?
They give a hard time about the Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings because it's not enforced by the state, it's not required. So I get a hard time for that. We have a hard time getting in classrooms with that. But there are some teachers that come and ask me about certain things, and they ask me to come teach a lesson. Like fourth grade, want me to come and teach about like South Dakota history and they do that one.
Well, my devious plot on things is they have to learn math, right? And the story I always give is about my friend Eric Longi, who, when we were and I know that others probably heard this story before, we were at Spirit Lake and his little grandson must have failed the math class. We're running to a meeting and his little boy says to Eric, "Papa, I don't need math because I'm an Indian." Eric stops and he says, "My boy, we were a nomadic people. We roamed all over these plains. We had to compute how far it was to another tribe and how long it would take for us to meet up. And that is a time, rate, and distance problem." And he said, we had to estimate like how much it took for us to survive through the winter for children and for adults. And that's an algebraic equation, right? Like so much for each kid and so much for, he said, "Did you just see dead frozen Indians all over these places?" "No, you didn't, because we knew how to compute things. We knew how to which amazed me, first of all, because there's your math lesson, right? And there's how you get those standards into the school. And also because honestly, I would have thought of that 3 days later. I would not have thought of that where my grade was standing right there. So what we've done is try to integrate that with every lesson, because there's always everywhere been math. So here's one. I really love this lesson because anybody who can include PE and math in the same thing is amazing. So here, the math standard is, can you see that on there on the Zoom there? So, perfect. The math standard is analyze proportional relationships and use them to solve real world problems. And this is a real thing. So in this assignment, and I didn't know that Don was going to be from a school about project-based learning, but in this assignment, so Joseph Oklahoma was the most decorated Native American in World War I. He got and Jennifer, who's another teacher's on the first session, she could say it in French, I can't, but the Croix de Guerre or whatever, he got basically the French equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but he didn't get it from the US. So there are people right now, generally it has to be within so many years after you died. There are people right now that have a petition out there trying to get him recognized by the US, because he's got a number of awards, but not the highest one. So talk about a real world problem that's really happening. And so for the literacy standards, write arguments on discipline specific content, use technology to produce in public writing. And I was telling Dawn earlier, so we got funded during the pandemic to come up with lessons and things that teachers could use right now. And after the first year, and were you guys teaching during the pandemic? Lucky them, huh? But after, nobody was prepared, right? You went to school to be a teacher. You didn't think you were going to be teaching fifth graders or sixth graders online. So the first year, they were just happy we had everything. And then second year, teachers started to say, could you put this together into units so that it wasn't just I had to go and pick and choose. And the other thing they wanted to know is, how long is this going to take me? So this lesson takes, and everything you see on Growing Math is set up in the same way. It'll tell you how long it's going to take, what the standards are taught, what technology required, because it's really frustrating if you have something planned out and then you find, oh, this requires MacBooks or this requires iPads and I don't have it. So anything that will run a browser, you can use it. it would be good a projector, not a projector or smart board connected to computer for a presentation, and then there'll be a summary of it. And so this includes history, math, English, computer applications, and PE. And what students do is they play a game that teaches about Native American veterans. This part is about World War I. And then they're going to presentation on a specific veteran. And then in PE class, they sprint 210 yards to simulate his attack. And then they write a presentation to nominate him for the Congressional Medal of Honor. And everything we have on here, if it's a presentation, the presentation is done. Now, you can take it and you can edit it. But whenever anybody comes into my office and says, all the teacher needs to do is, I send them back. Because I said, that teacher's got enough to do. So if you want them to give a presentation, so here is the slide presentation. And any of these things, people can, teachers can copy and edit. So all of this is copyright free. But one of the things that we've heard from a lot of teachers around the country don't have the benefit of being on a reservation is they don't have people like Juliana or Bailey there, and they're just struggling. Like, they want to teach about Native American history, but they don't want to teach the wrong thing. I'll be honest, before I started this project, I knew about the Navajo Windtalkers because it was a movie, and that was it. So the presentation starts out telling them, do you know what year all Native Americans were recognized as citizens? Now, I am not a history teacher, as I will say about 100 times, but I have heard from history teachers, they try and organize around a central question. It starts out with some questions. It tells them their assignment by the end of this is to learn about this veteran and create a convincing application to get him recognized. And this middle school students like secret documents. No, for reals, because so I got this out of the National Archives. It is actually a declassified secret document that talked about the code talkers that, as Tim said, the first ones were Choctaw and Chickasaw. And see, Bailey's nodding because she knows all this, but the fact is that lots of kids, this is like amazing to them. Or this is a real secret document? Yes, it is. And it was classified because it was basically a secret weapon. And so the letter goes through from this general, how the Germans had cracked their code, and they knew they were listening in because they had a fake military base where they said stuff was, and then the fake, the misdirected information, that place got bombed, so they knew it. So anyway, the students read this, and all of this stuff is provided. So, and this is just right out of it, that regiment possessed a company of Indians. They spoke 26 different languages, only 4 or 5 of which were ever written. There was hardly one chance in a million that Fritz would be able to translate these dialects. And then, funny enough, Joseph Oklahoma was one of these code talkers, but that's not all he did. And this is from a newspaper back in the day that says, under a violent barrage, dashed to the attack of an enemy position covering 210 yards through barbed wire entanglements and rushed a machine gun nest and taking 171 prisoners. So the first thing is they read this. So this is in their class. And so the teacher presents it and they read the documents, the literally secret documents. And then in PE, they have to go run 210 yards and you set up obstacles. One teacher said, we have a lot of old textbooks from like the 1960s because they never replaced our stuff. So she was going to put stack of, but they have to run dashing over all this stuff to get an idea. And then imagine doing that while people are shooting at you. And if those weren't just books, they were barbed wire. So it's pretty, I don't know if any of you have ever run into barbed wire. Oh, I have. It's painful, I tell you. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose, obviously. And then the other thing is you can have the students, when I was doing this game design class, there's always students that don't want to do stuff for whatever reason. So sometimes they were pretty willing to be actors in a video. And so you could have part of your presentation, have somebody acted out in a video and have students put backpacks on. Because remember, they're running in boots, carrying their equipment. So have them do that and get videotaped by one of their classmates. So this is something you could do after school. And so here's the math part of it. We were talking about ratio and proportion. So there's 2 accounts. So what we know for a fact is that Private Oklahoma and 23 other soldiers attacked 4 machine gun nests. What we know for a fact is this guy ran, dived into the machine gun nest where these Germans were, took their own machine guns, turned it against them, kill them, use them. Now he's got, so there's all the the soldiers lined up, right? So now he's got the machine guns that he's turned onto the other Germans, and that lets the other soldiers come behind him. And between those 24 guys took 171 German prisoners. Now this we know for a fact, because when you get prisoners, you have to get their name, rank, serial number, and processing that. There's a second account that said they also killed 79 soldiers. Now, presumably they did kill some, like he didn't just walk up and say, give me your guns. And they're like, here. But it's World War I. And I know, Tim, you probably can say more than me about it was chaos, right? Like the guns and the smoke. And so your math student's question is, what's the ratio of Germans to Americans in the attack? Because if I'm saying this guy should get the Medal of Honor, why? Well, he's outnumbered something to something else. So then they have to have an equation. And so in the first one, it was 171. They took prisoner. There's no question about that. And there was 23 other soldiers plus him. So it's 171 to 24 or 7-1. So when people say, when am I ever going to use this? Well, here's one way. Or let's say, I mean, like I said, we know we must have killed some people, right? Like, as war is different. I heard I heard interviews with Dr. Medicine Crow when he's talking about killing all the German soldiers in World War II. And yeah, I mean, just kind of laughing about it, which I was a little bit shocked. But on the other hand, if people were shooting at me, I would sure as heck shoot back. So the second question is, for the second one, it's 171 plus 79. So that's 250 to 23 plus 1. So again, here's you're using your algebraic equations and ratio and proportion, and it comes out that they were outnumbered more than 10-1. So there's history and math. If that wasn't even up, he wasn't even recognized as a citizen when he signed up for the military. So that's crazy. And so if you're doing your presentation as a student, all this stuff can go into it. And I know Don was saying how students don't write papers anymore. And part of it is they don't know where to start. And so if you give them a start, hey, he was outnumbered 10-1, he wasn't even a citizen, and he was a code talker. Well, and I think what I've found a lot of times with middle school and secondary students is the reason they don't do stuff, the reason they're pancaked on their desk like that, is sometimes they just don't know, right? They don't know how to. Sometimes we think they're just being difficult, where if you gave them a little assistance. And so we brought actually copies of things for outlines and cards. So we'll get to those in a little minute. Anyway, there's the presentation. There's a lot of more information, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But when I mentioned while you're looking for characters, because we're going to do that in a little minute, you all are going to search, and I brought computers. So if you didn't bring a computer,